My name is Sabrina DeLuca, and my father once told me that in our family, respect was measured by the size of your paycheck. He said it with pride over dinner one night, his voice carrying through the house like a sermon. Everyone laughed, including my Aunt Lydia and my Uncle Paul, as if money was proof of virtue. I didn't laugh. I was too busy calculating how much rent they owed me. They didn't know. Of course, to them, I was still the quiet office clerk in a cramped law firm, the one who made coffee runs and filed other people's success stories. Frank liked to remind me, "You're not cut out for big things. Sabrina, you don't have the voice for it." I nodded then. But I remember thinking, you don't need volume when you have documents. At every gathering, they filled the room with noise, Alex bragging about his portfolio, Emily posting live updates, Lydia talking over everyone. I stayed quiet, watching the performance unfold in the same living room that technically belonged to me. I knew every mortgage payment, every tax record, every key code to every property they were boasting about inheriting one day. Sometimes, I'd glance around that noisy table and wonder how long it would take before someone noticed the truth. The thought always made me smile. Small enough not to draw attention. They believed they were the heirs of the DeLuca fortune. I was simply the clerk who handled the paperwork. What they didn't realize was that the paperwork had already made me their landlord. My grandmother, Clara DeLuca, built everything from a corner grocery store and a relentless will. She used to say, "Real wealth is what keeps working when you sleep." And every time she said it, her hands were stained with dust from the properties she'd been restoring. By the time I was old enough to understand numbers, she owned 8 rental homes across North End. Boston, nothing glamorous, but every one of them fully paid off. I was the only one who saw the effort behind her empire. The rent checks written in cramped handwriting. The repairs she tracked on yellow notepads stacked beside her coffee cup. My father called her old-fashioned, saying she should sell everything and live like a queen. My Aunt Lydia thought managing tenants was beneath the DeLuca name. And my Uncle Paul wanted to use the properties as collateral for his failing garage. I told her once, "They don't get it, Grandma." And she smiled. "They don't need to. Sabrina, you do." The truth was, I did. I understood that she wasn't preserving real estate, she was preserving proof that hard work still meant something. When she grew older, I started helping her with errands no one else bothered with. She'd hand me envelopes of rent to deposit, whispering, "Don't mention this to the others. They'll think it's money, not trust." Each envelope carried a kind of unspoken inheritance, a quiet vote of confidence. The others saw her as a fading matriarch. I saw a strategist making her final move. The day she walked into the attorney's office, I thought we were updating her will. She looked at me and said, "A will waits until I'm gone. A trust acts while I'm alive." I signed where she pointed, feeling her pen steady in my hand. "When we left," she said softly, "now they'll never see it coming." I remember glancing at the folder and thinking, neither will they, and that was the point. At dinner one night, Lydia raised her glass and said, "To real success careers that actually pay the bills." The table erupted in laughter as Alex leaned toward me, smirking. "You still at that little law office, filing other people's dreams?" I said nothing, just cut my food and watched the reflection of the chandelier in my wine. Frank patted my hand like a parent humoring a child. "Don't take it hard, sweetheart. Not everyone is meant to be ambitious." Axum. I could feel the irony twist inside me. Sharp and quiet. The same people mocking my job were 3 months behind on property taxes I'd paid under the DeLuca Trust. Emily showed me her phone and said, "Look, my post from last week hit 10,000 likes. That's what visibility gets you." "Cousin." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, Visibility always pays off. The table missed the weight in my tone. Too busy clinking glasses over debts they didn't know were already mine. Frank leaned back and announced, "When your grandmother's gone, we'll finally simplify things. Split the homes evenly. It's only fair." Lydia nodded. "Of course. We all built that legacy together." Paul laughed. "Except Sabrina. But maybe we'll toss her something for all the paperwork." My fork rested midair when I said softly, "You should make sure the paperwork says what you think it does." I see." They laughed again. Louder this time. Like the sound itself could drown out meaning. Alex whispered, "You wouldn't understand these things. Cousin, property law's not exactly your field." I met his grin with a calm so still it unsettled him. "You're right," I said. "But I read enough contracts to know who signs them." Lydia rolled her eyes. Frank changed the subject, and I finished my wine slowly, thinking how none of them realized they were already living under my signature. The message arrived on a Wednesday morning. A group text blinking across my phone like a summons. "Family meeting this Sunday." Emily wrote, "Estate planning everyone needs to attend." Paul added a thumbs up. Lydia replied with hearts. And Frank closed it with, "About time we got organized." I stared at the thread, feeling the irony settle in. They were planning to divide something they didn't even own. When I called Frank to ask what it was about, his voice carried the easy arrogance of someone certain of his inheritance. "We just want to make sure things are handled fairly," he said. I asked, "Fairly for who?" And he laughed. "For the family." "Of course. Don't worry. Sweetheart. No one's leaving you out." His tone dripped with the kind of assurance people use when they think they're being generous. Lydia chimed in later that evening with her version of diplomacy. "We'll probably bring in Alex to manage the numbers," she said. "He's good with finance. You can handle notes or logistics, whatever suits you." I answered, "Notes are my specialty." And she replied, "See, that's why we need you. Every family needs someone responsible." I hung up before my laughter could give me away. That night, I typed a single message to Robert Hale. "They're meeting Sunday. It's happening." His reply came back a minute later. "Calm as always. I'll be ready." I looked at the phone screen until the light dimmed and thought, so will I. I arrived first. Which was fitting. Lydia liked to make an entrance. Frank liked to be in control. And Paul never showed up on time unless there was money involved. When they finally gathered, Lydia started things with her usual confidence. "We're just here to make this process smooth," she said, her voice light. "It's what Grandma would want." Frank nodded like a man already rehearsing ownership. "Let's be fair about this," he said. 3 siblings. 8 properties. We can split by value. 1-2. Alex opened his laptop with a self-satisfied grin. "I've run the numbers," he said. 4 houses go to Frank. 3 to Lydia. 1 to Paul. And we sell the rest to balance liquidity. I asked, "Liquidity for what?" And he didn't look up. "For distribution. Of course. Taxes. Estate fees. Future management. You wouldn't understand legal structures aren't your world," I said quietly. "You'd be surprised what I understand." Lydia smiled thinly. "Sabrina. Dear. You'll have a role too. Maybe assisting with paperwork? Grandma always said you're dependable." "I will," Paul snorted. "Dependable. Yes. Ambitious. Not so much. We'll take care of the heavy lifting," I said. "By heavy lifting, you mean cashing checks?" His chair creaked as he leaned forward. "Watch your tone." "Kid," Frank interrupted before it could spiral. "Enough. Let's agree now before Grandma's gone. The faster we move, the cleaner the process. My heart was steady. The irony was that they were trying to speed up something that had already happened. Lydia clasped her hands as though she were chairing a board meeting. I suggest Alex handle valuations and I'll contact a realtor I trust. I asked, Does Grandma know you're selling? Frank waved me off. She's tired. Sabrina. She doesn't need the stress. We're handling this for her. I let that sit for a second. So this is a family decision, I said. Paul nodded. Exactly. Equal and fair. I looked at the papers on the table and said, Then I'm sure you won't mind if I check the county records before you finalize anything. They laughed. All of them. A chorus of misplaced certainty, Lydia said. You and your little clerical habits, honestly. Sabrina. Who checks county records? I said. The person who owns what's listed there. Silence spread like a slow leak. Frank frowned. What are you implying? I reached for my phone. That maybe you should take a look before we keep pretending this conversation matters. The room fell still. Lydia's voice cracked the quiet. Pretending? What the hell does that mean? I replied. It means you're negotiating over assets that haven't belonged to you for years. Paul slammed a fist on the table. That's enough. You don't talk to your elders like... The doorbell cut him off. And Lydia stood. We're not expecting anyone, I said. I am. She froze as I opened the door and let in Robert Hale. He greeted them like an invited guest. Good afternoon. I'm Robert Hale, attorney for the DeLuca Trust. Frank's face went pale. What trust? Robert set his briefcase on the table and began removing documents one by one. The trust executed by Mrs. Tomation, Clara DeLuca in May 2019, transferring all 8 properties into the DeLuca Irrevocable Trust under the sole administration of her granddaughter. Sabrina DeLuca. Lydia whispered. That's impossible, Robert continued. All deeds have been recorded with Suffolk County, notarized, and filed. Ownership was legally transferred 4 years ago. Alex shot to his feet. This is fraud. She manipulated an old woman. Robert didn't blink. Mrs. DeLuca was declared of sound mind by 2 independent physicians before signing. All due diligence was observed. I added. And if you want proof of who's been paying property taxes since then, I can show you 4 years of receipts. Frank's voice cracked. You've been collecting rent behind our backs. I met his disbelief with calm precision. No, I've been maintaining what you forgot existed. Paul tried to recover his footing. You think this makes you better than us? I said. No. It just makes me the owner. Lydia's lipstick trembled against her words. You hid this from your own family? I answered. Grandma told me to watch how you treat me when you think I have nothing. She said the truth would reveal character. Robert kept stacking documents until the table disappeared beneath proof. The noise of paper was the only sound that mattered. Alex's face reddened as he reached for a lifeline. You stole her money. I know it. You were taking advantage. Robert turned another page. Actually, it was Alex Romano who withdrew a total of $6,000 from Mrs. DeLuca's personal account over 3 months. Without authorization, Frank's jaw dropped. Alex. Is that true? Alex stammered. She told me to handle bills, Robert replied. Then you'll have no trouble showing receipts when the Attorney General's office asks. The color drained from his face. And for once, no one came to his defense. Lydia whispered. I don't believe this. I looked at her and said, Believe what you like. The deeds don't care. Frank muttered. You betrayed us. I said, You betrayed her. Paul stood abruptly. We'll contest it. Robert handed him a card. You're welcome to? Though I'd advise against wasting your savings on a case you'll lose. The room sagged under the weight of that truth. Lydia's eyes glistened, but not from remorse, only disbelief that power had shifted so completely. Frank finally asked, "Why would she give everything to you?" I said quietly. "Because I showed up." His mouth opened. But no words came. Lydia whispered, "This will destroy us." I met her gaze. Then maybe it's about time something honest did. Robert closed his briefcase, the click echoing like a gavel. I rose, smoothed the edge of my sleeve, and said, "You don't need to understand it. You just need to start paying rent on time." No one spoke again. Their silence was the first real fairness this family had ever known. After that day, the house went silent in ways I'd never heard before. Frank stopped calling. Lydia pretended I didn't exist. And Paul only reached out once to ask if I'd consider restructuring family ownership. I said, "You don't restructure what you never built." He hung up without another word. The truth had stripped them of their volume. And, for the first time, peace felt louder than their voices ever were. Alex eventually paid back what he stole to avoid prosecution. Frank withdrew from everyone, blaming me for the collapse he'd engineered himself. Lydia tried to fight legally until her lawyer explained what irrevocable really meant. Emily deleted her social media for a while, claiming she needed mental clarity. I watched it all unfold with a quiet distance, like observing a storm move away loud, destructive, but finally leaving air that could be breathed again. Grandma Clara passed 3 months later. Her last note left in a simple envelope. "You didn't just inherit property," she wrote. "You inherited peace. Protect it." When Frank called after the funeral, his voice was thin. "You destroyed this family," he said. I answered, "No. I just showed it the mirror Grandma left behind." He didn't call again. Lydia's letters stopped too, each one shorter and colder, until silence did what logic couldn't ended the argument. I used the rent income to start DeLuca Management, a modest company that handled not just Grandma's homes but a few others. When I signed new leases, I thought of how her handwriting used to loop around every number. I funded a scholarship in her name for students studying community development. It wasn't charity. It was continuation. One evening, I sat in her old kitchen, a cup of espresso cooling beside me, and thought about everything I hadn't said that day. Some truths don't need to be repeated, they just need to be lived. I looked out the window at the quiet street and said softly, "You were right, Grandma. The right kind of silence builds more than noise ever will." What? Thank you for listening to my story. If you believe silence can carry more strength than noise, stay here with me. Every story on this channel is a quiet rebellion against what people assume. Subscribe. And let's keep uncovering the power that lives inside stillness and truth.